Hi, True Avatars, and welcome to your Queer Video Game Podcast. This is episode 21, and I am your host, Zoe Wild. I am a transgender and bisexual woman, and my pronouns are she, her. This week, I'm by myself for the first half, but today is going to have a slightly different rhythm because I'll be skipping the usual What I've Been Playing segment, as well as, most of the news, because there wasn't that much news anyway. The few headlines that there were, I'm going to save for next week, in favor of this week's biggest news, which is the PlayStation State of Play. And then, in the second half of the episode, I have a really exciting guest, or guests, really, and they are Rocket Adrift. Rocket Adrift are a queer, black, and neurodivergent group of 3 developers, known for making Raptor Boyfriend and Psychroma. They will be joining me for a very cool interview. I've been hoping to have them on for a while, and I even discussed their games in detail in the previous episode, so please go back and listen to that too if you haven't already. But first, let's jump right into the State of Play and get going with things. So, for anyone who may not know, the PlayStation State of Play is a digital presentation live stream where Sony announces upcoming video games by showing off trailers and interviews. It's basically their version of a Nintendo Direct, if you're familiar with that. And there were a lot of exciting reveals, including a queer game or two, so I'm not going to have time to cover them all, but I can talk about the ones that I found most exciting, or at least relevant to the podcast. So the first one is Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. And we've talked about this on the show before. I was hoping to have Amy Linda on to talk about this, but that wasn't possible this week, so I'll do my best to cover it. So when I first saw the Sonic Racing CrossWorlds teaser trailer, which was just Shadow driving a car through a portal, and I think they showed that off at the Game Awards, my first thought was, oh, maybe they're going to do like the Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart thing where you're like jumping through different tracks through portals and stuff like that. And that is exactly what they're doing, which I think is so cool. I mean, when I was little, I liked the Hot Wheels movies where they jump through portals into different tracks. So like this feels like a realization of that. So like it looks visually very nice. The gameplay looks great, although I'm not really sure how much actual gameplay was in here and what console it might have been on. I think there probably is a disclaimer somewhere saying like, oh, all this was captured on PC with the high specs, but it looks visually very nice. I'm kind of just scrubbing through the trailer here to like take a quick peek at it, and there's like all kinds of different like environments that they race through, different types of cars. It looks like a monster truck. Sonic's driving his usual like, I don't know, sports car. I also saw hoverboards, which I think came from a previous Sonic racing game as well. And Tails even has a fighter jet, so it's got kind of some Diddy Kong racing vibes, possibly. It looks really good. And honestly, the fact that it's doing the portal jumping thing, I wonder how like taxing that would be on a console, because I know Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart had a lot of like, it only would work on a PS5, for example. Like they couldn't have got that game running on a PS4 as far as I know. So I'm curious how this is going to run on the Switch, because it's supposed to be coming for Switch, which is definitely the weakest platform of all the ones they announced. But yeah, very pretty, huge variety of environments, like I said. Actually, I see one screenshot here too. It looks like they're racing on water. I'm trying to find, I just scrubbed past it. I can't find it anymore. Yeah, okay, so I found it. And yeah, there is like a pirate ship world where it seems like you race on water for part of it. So kind of like, it's not really a boat. It looks like the car kind of gets like, I don't know, like little hover thingies so you can like, or like little jets, I don't know, propellers, so they can race in the water. But it feels very Mario Kart 8 like, in the way that like it seems like there's all these different like environments to race through, and like it changes your car as you race through. So it's possible everyone can fly. It's possible everyone can go in the water. I'm not sure about the skateboard thing. If there's gonna be like a skate park track where everyone's car turns into a skateboard, or if that's like, oh, I'm choosing to race on a skateboard, I have no idea. I guess the only thing I'll really say about this is no matter how good this game looks, it's going to launch the same week, or at least the same month as Mario Kart 9, and this game will be dead in the water. It just will. Sega keeps saying, I think when Sonic Superstars? That was the new 2D one they did, I think. Anyway, when that came out, a few months later, Sega said, oh, we made a mistake by releasing this the same week as Mario. And I think it came out the same week as, like within 2 days of like Mario Wonder. So my thinking is like, they must have known that Nintendo was going to launch a new console this year. And they must have been able to like, even fans knew before the trailer for the Switch 2 came out, everyone knew that they were going to release a new Mario Kart this year. It's been so long since the last Mario Kart. It's been 11 years. It was going to be a launch title. The last game sold super well. It sold like 62 million units or something like that on Switch, which is one of Nintendo's best-selling games of all time. So it would be shocking if Nintendo didn't launch a new Mario Kart this year. So Sega must have known that, or at least suspected that Nintendo was going to launch a new Mario Kart. And what's the only thing that could make a Sonic game not sell well, or at least a Sonic racing game anyway, is a better looking, similarly branded, similar style, not branded, but similar style racing game. Like, I don't understand. Like, they should honestly have not revealed this game, and they should have back-pocketed it for, like, next year or something like that. Because whether Mario Kart 9 comes out in the spring or it comes out in the fall, I'm certain Racing CrossWorlds is going to come out in the fall, but Mario Kart 9 could launch with the Switch, I think, when it comes out either May, June, or maybe even July. They could launch with Mario Kart 9. But even if Mario Kart 9 comes out in July or May, for example, and then Sonic Racing CrossWorlds comes out late October, early November for a holiday game, like, Mario Kart 9 is just going to trample it. It just is. Like, it doesn't matter how good Racing CrossWorlds is. Even if Mario Kart 9 is terrible and Racing CrossWorlds is like a 10 out of 10 game, Mario Kart 9 will sell more on branding alone. So I think it's a big mistake for Sega to be doing this game this year, no matter how good it looks. I'm kind of beating a dead horse with this conversational topic, but I just, like, what are they thinking? Like, they said they learned their lesson with Sega Sonic Superstars, but did they, though? Because even if they... Again, I doubt Nintendo told them we were making a new Mario Kart game, but, like, the writing was on the wall. Like, it was written on the wall in the clearest possible paint and the clearest possible writing that you could imagine. Anyway, I don't know. I hope it does well. I'm going to play this. I think it looks really good. Like I said, just the Portal thing alone is enough to make me want to play it. But there are some details about the game that we know. There are 23 playable characters, and it seems like they're all Sonic characters so far, but there will also be Sega characters, according to PlayStation's blog. So there was one website here, Sonic Stadium. So they did find out that, yeah, like I said, the 23 characters at launch seems to come from them. And a ton more will be added after launch. And they went through and spotted all 23 characters. And I think for Amy's sake, she would definitely want me to do this. But there's Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, Amy, Eggman, Jet, Wave, Storm, Shadow, Rouge, E123 Omega, that we're getting into the characters I don't know anymore. Vector, Charmy, Espio, Blaze. Okay, I know Blaze and Silver. Cream. I know Cream. Zavok, Zaz, Big, Metal Sonic, and Eggpon, and Sage from Sonic Frontiers. I think Sage is the robot that, like, helps Sonic throughout the game, or maybe she's an enemy. I haven't played Sonic Frontiers yet. I'm sorry, I'm butchering this, and Amy Lynn is going to kill me. But anyway, yeah, I know a lot of people are very excited about the possibility of Sega characters too, and I bet there will probably be the odd third-party character as well. How funny would it be if one of them was Mario? It will never happen. If anything, Sonic is probably going to guest in the new Mario Kart game at some point, and it's going to be an even bigger slap in the face, to be honest. But anyway, so there is a closed network test happening for this game, and you can sign up right now. At the time of recording, today is Sunday, February 16th. This podcast is going to go live tomorrow morning, so Monday morning, February 17th. And I think you'll be able to sign up until, I want to say the 18th or 19th, maybe the 20th. But they're sending out the codes on the 20th. And I think as soon as they send out the codes, you can join the closed network test to test out the game. It's only PS5, and I think it's a lottery sign up. So, like, you can, like, I got my name in there, but, like, there's no guarantee I'm going to get a code. But you'll get to try out the game early. It might be a little buggy, obviously, because it's a network test. Like, it's essentially a beta. Like I said, there's no release date for the game yet. They didn't even give a launch window. I think they might have said 2025 at the end of the trailer, but that's about it. But again, I think it's like Sonic games come out late October, early November, so that's when it's coming out. The only other possible release date is if Mario Kart 9 comes out in May, June, or July. Sonic could also come out the same week as that. Anyway, so the platforms are PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, Nintendo Switch, and PC. I think there will also be Switch 2, the Switch 2 version, but they haven't said anything yet, and they probably won't. In fact, I don't even know if the announcement for the Switch 2 version will be in Nintendo's Direct on April 2nd. If they're trying to highlight Mario Kart 9, this would be a competitor, right? So anyway, let's move on to Borderlands 4. I have very little to say about this because I've not played a Borderlands game. I didn't even see the movie, but they did show a Borderlands 4 trailer in the State of Play. And this game, aside from one other game later in the presentation, this was the most notable and obviously queer game that they showed off. Again, I don't even know what was happening in the trailer. There was shooting, it was colorful, it was zany, it looked like a lot of fun. But again, I don't even know if there was anything in there that's like, oh yeah, they revealed something, kind of like, because there wasn't like big things showing off features, there wasn't any text really, it was just like a minute of like gameplay, like a sizzle reel. So maybe people, I know when we were watching before, Ekami pointed out that from the Game Awards, I think it was the Game Awards trailer, she pointed out that there was like something in there that hinted at a new queer thing or character. So it's possible there was more stuff in there like that too that I just didn't pick up on because I don't know anything about Borderlands. But reading through comments, it seems like diehard fans are excited for the game. It seems like people are hoping that it will be a little bit better than Borderlands 3. I know there was a lukewarm reception to that game, so people are saying it's more comparable to Borderlands 2, at least the way it looks currently. The release date was revealed, though. That's the one new piece of information that was definitely in there. It's coming September 23rd, 2025 to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. I think it's going to come to Switch 2. Borderlands 3 was running on Switch 1. I don't know how well it was running on Switch 1, but it did come to Switch 1. So I think there's a very good chance it's coming to Switch 2. But again, no one's going to say anything because everyone's scared of Nintendo and revealing games before it. In fact, it's possible Nintendo's even said, like, hey, we want to reveal your game in our Direct on April 2nd. So that's where it'll get shown off, possibly. But I do think it's coming to Switch 2. Even if it doesn't come to Switch 2 at launch, I think it will be there. The next game was Split Fiction. So this was the game revealed from the It Takes Two developers that was shown off at the Game Awards. So it's another co-op game about two women who go in to play virtual reality versions of stories they've written in order to stop a corporation from stealing their stories. So it's very anti-corporation, anti-capitalist. I love it. It's great. Very excited to play it. One of the characters is named Zoe, so that's super exciting. As far as I can tell, there's no queer themes in the game from what we've seen from the trailers. But as you'll see later, I missed details because there is a game that was shown off in the presentation that I was like, maybe it's queer, maybe it's not, I don't know. And then I went on Reddit and asked, and everyone's like, did you miss this obvious thing in the trailer? And I'm like, okay, I obviously missed this obvious thing in the trailer. But anyway, I do hope Split Fiction, whether it's queer or not, it's women-led. Like it's like a women are in front and center in this game. It's a women-led story, which is great. I do hope the moral of the story, the themes of the game are a little bit stronger than It Takes Two's last game. Or no, sorry. I've been saying the dev is not called It Takes Two. The game was called, the devs that made It Takes Two. Oh, wow. I can't believe it. This is what happens when I record on a Sunday morning. So It Takes Two is the name of the game. And the developer, whose name escapes me right now, I'm going to look it up super quick. Hazelight Studios. Okay, so Hazelight Studios is making Split Fiction. They made It Takes Two. And I know in It Takes Two, that game won Game of the Year, but I know there were some people who were iffy on the morals of the story, or the moral of the story in that game. So I do hope that Split Fiction has a better message, and so far it seems to, being very anti-capitalist, anti-corporation, very much in control of your own narrative kind of a thing. So it comes out March 6th, though, so we'll find out pretty soon, less than a month. It's coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Whenever I say Xbox Series in this presentation, or in this podcast, that includes S and X. I'm just not going to say that every time, because at a certain point I'm going to say it so fast, I'm going to say Xbox Series Sex, which I just said anyway. It's probably going to come to Switch 2 as well, since It Takes Two was on the Switch 1. It probably just can't run on the Switch 2, or the Switch 1, so it's not coming there, plus they can't announce it for Switch 2 yet. But we should also be seeing reviews very soon, so I'm excited to see how this game shakes out. But it looks gorgeous. Unless it's like there's something seriously wrong with it from the reviews, I'll be playing it day one, because it looks awesome. The next game that they showed off is Dark Pictures Directive 8020. So the team that made Until Dawn has been making smaller episodic games as part of this anthology series called Dark Pictures. I think this game that I'm just talking about, Directive 8020, is the start of their second season of the anthology. I don't know why they're breaking it into seasons. They're just annual releases anyway. I think they took a year off last year, so maybe that year gap was kind of a way to justify the year gap while making another game. I don't know. It's not like they release them as a set anyway, like as a season where you have to buy all of them. They're all individual games. It's an anthology series. They're shorter. They're not nearly as big as Until Dawn, for example, or The Quarry. But they have been working their way through various horror genres and themes. And now they've come to space horror. And it seems very heavily inspired by Alien. I think it's going to be compared to Alien Isolation, which is unfortunate because that game is very, very solid. In fact, it's so good it scares me too much to play it. So it probably won't be that. It will be compared to that, and maybe people who see the trailer might think like, oh, this looks like Alien Isolation. It won't play like Alien Isolation. It'll have survival elements, but these games are like playable movies. So definitely not what, if you're looking for another Alien Isolation type game, this is not for you. But if you want the vibes of that, then this is for you. But this game seems to be about a parasitic alien that is slowly or quickly at least figuring out how to transform into and mimic humans that are on this spaceship. It stars Lashana Lynch, who you'll remember from the Captain Marvel movies. She played Maria Rambeau, Brie Larson's BFF. It's nice to see a black lead in these games because I think they've all been white people up until now, as far as I know. I think they've gone back and forth on men and women in the protagonist role, which is pretty normal for a horror genre, but seeing a black lead is really nice to see. It's also possible there'll be some queer representation because The Quarry had great queer and POC representation. It's coming October 2nd to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. I don't think it's coming to Switch 2. None of the other games came to Switch 1. It's possible they change that up, but so far I don't think this developer has released anything for a Nintendo console. Maybe they'll start, but again, there's no reason to say they will if they won't. So for now, assume you're going to be playing on a PS5 or Xbox Series or even PC. I do, however, recommend waiting for reviews because these games, they're usually not buggy as far as I know, but sometimes the stories aren't as strong as, like, if you're expecting Until Dawn or the Quarry level storytelling, sometimes the games aren't that. I played through the first game, which was fine. I liked it enough. It was called Man of Medan. It was okay. It didn't scratch the itch that Until Dawn and the Quarry did for me. And then I heard that the second game wasn't super strong, so I avoided it. And then I think the third game, was it the third game or the fourth game? Whichever one had Ashley Tisdale in it. I heard it got great reviews, so I picked it up. I haven't had a chance to play it, though. But I've heard that one is strong. So just wait for reviews, wait for a couple days after the game comes out, see how people are feeling about it. Because there's, like, lots to play. There's no reason to pre-order a game of this, like this. There's almost never a reason to pre-order a game, to be honest. I do. Because I just do. Sometimes I like pre-ordering games. Sometimes it locks in a lower price point. Sometimes I know I'm going to play it no matter how broken it is, like Pokemon games. But maybe usually they do physical copies for this too. So like if there's a deal in store. But these games tend to drop in price really quickly too. Usually within the first few months, I feel like there's a 25 to 30% discount. So unless you're really trying to play it for Halloween, definitely wait on reviews. I'm kind of rambling on this one now. I do love the Alien movies, so I think this is the most I've been excited for a Dark Pictures story since I played Until Dawn and The Quarry, because like the other games, like they just don't tackle horror genres I love nearly as much as the Alien movies. The next game was The Midnight Walk, which is a VR action puzzle horror adventure game. Their words, I think, not mine. With models designed to look like clay figures. It might have even been animated in clay. It looks like something straight out of Tim Burton's Nightmares, for what that's worth. You're basically guiding this little clay guy through the world, and it really does look like a Tim Burtonized version of the game from, if anyone's seen the movie Her, with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, there's like a game that he plays that's kind of like VR, but he plays it like it's projected, like holographically projected into his living room, and he's like using his hands to walk while this like kind of this annoying little character is like guiding you through this world. And this character doesn't seem to be annoying in that sense, but it looks like a Tim Burton version of that game. So if you've been waiting for that game to exist, like me, this game might be for you. It does come from the developers who made Lost in Random. And the Steam summary reads as follows. Befriend a lost lantern creature and light your way through a world of wonder and terror. Outsmart monsters and marvel at details in a landscape handcrafted with real clay and animated in a stop-motion style. So if I'd read my own show notes, I would know that it was animated with real clay. It seems to be playable normally on PC and PS5. It does seem to be a VR, like I said it before, it was a VR game, but it does seem to be a game that you can also play normally, like I said, on a PS5 or PC. The release date is May 8th. Looks great, looks cute, looks horrifying. Like it's got Tim Burton-iness, it's like cute, but also terrifying. The next game is Darwin's Paradox, and this seems to be the one that I was most excited for, not only because it's Konami's new IP, I think it's a new IP. It's an adorable side-scrolling puzzle platformer that's reminiscent-ish of games like Inside and Planet of Lana. So you play as a cute little octopus trying to basically survive a food factory. Anyway, I'll let the really kind of lengthy description take over from here, but it reads, embark on a grand adventure worthy of a true animated movie with Darwin, an octopus as charming as he is clever, ripped from the ocean and trapped in a massive and mysterious industrial complex. With his extraordinary intelligence and incredible abilities, swimming, camouflage, and many other fascinating skills help him overcome the most formidable traps and dangers in this captivating platformer, adventure, and puzzle game. In the peaceful vastness of the ocean, Darwin, a young octopus, explores the deep sea, until a strange beam of light pierces the abyss and pulls him towards the surface. Thrust out of his aquatic world, he wakes up disoriented in the middle of a gigantic junkyard, backed by a foreboding factory. But something is wrong. Between the threatening machines, strange holding tanks, and the mysterious and dangerous creatures and characters that inhabit the place, Darwin realizes he is in danger. To return to the ocean, Darwin will have to outsmart, evolve, and reveal to the players through his journey the mysteries of a conspiracy that goes beyond anything anyone could have imagined, and which could very well seal the fate of humanity. So, despite the horroriness of it, like this very dystopian element that it's got these like visuals and the story obviously and the themes, it looks very cute. Like it's freaking cute, which is the reason I want to play it. You know, I'm going for the cuteness. I'm staying for the dystopian vibes is the way I look at it. So like the summary kind of mentioned, you have to use your octopus abilities to escape. So like swimming, sticking to surfaces, shooting ink, camouflaging. It looks very mechanically interesting. And who doesn't want to play as a cute little octopus? So this is a day one for me, unless reviews come out saying that there's something wrong with it, or there's something, or you know, something weird like it's transphobic or something, which I doubt, to be honest, but who knows? It's kind of scary though. There are some scenes where you have to avoid being eaten or sliced up by giant like cleavers or hit by a car. And it's just a 1-minute trailer, but I already feel really bad for the octopus. I'm worried this game is going to be the final push for me becoming a full vegan. I'm a pescatarian right now, so the only meat I eat is seafood. But we'll see. There was no release date given or even a release window, no year and nothing like that. They said it's coming to PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. I think if it's coming to those consoles, it's also coming to Switch too. At the very least, it'll be backwards compatible on Switch too, but I think given that the PS5 version looks so good, Konami's going to want to get a nice good-looking version on the Switch too as well. Okay, just a few more games left. So another game that was revealed is called Dreams of Another, which seems to be this like really weird, pointless kind of game where you're walking around an environment, and I think it's regular PlayStation 5, but also VR too. And you're basically shooting a gun. It's a third-person shooter where you're shooting around the world. But as you shoot the world, it actually comes into focus, right? So like all these like pixels, pointless painting dots things, which I can't use words for apparently, kind of come together and shape the world around you. It looks really fucking gorgeous. Like it looks amazing. It looks like it's coming from Pixel Junk. But the summary reads, Dreams of Another is a third-person exploration action game built around the theme, there is no creation without destruction. Rather than destroying objects by shooting, as in traditional shooting games, here your shots materialize and rebuild the world. This unconventional mechanic offers a gameplay experience that challenges the norms of the genre and invites players into a whole new dimension. Uncover the thoughts, emotions, and secrets, piecing together the mysteries of this dreamlike world and navigate the liminal space between dreams and reality. So, I don't have too much to say beyond that. It looks great. I'm not sure if there was a release date. I think the release window was just 2025, but nothing beyond that. And as far as I can tell, it's a PlayStation exclusive, so it's coming to PS5 and PSVR 2. I couldn't find any confirmation of a PC release, an Xbox release. It looks too good to be coming to Switch 1, to be honest, so I doubt it's coming there, but I could see it coming to Switch 2. So, PlayStation also showed off more footage from Lost Records Bloom and Rage, which is the next game from the original Life is Strange devs, Don't Nod. So this looks like Life is Strange meets the TV show Yellow Jackets. I don't want to spoil too much about Yellow Jackets itself, but it's basically a show set, I think, in the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s, where a bunch of girls are on a sports trip. I can't remember if they're volleyball or soccer. But anyway, their plane crashes in the wilderness and they're kind of forced to survive out in the wilderness. The show also takes place like 30 years later as adults with the survivors, and you're kind of cutting back and forth between them and figuring out like what kind of went down between these two time periods. So this game seems to have that kind of style of like it takes place in the 90s and it takes place now, and you're kind of trying to figure out like maybe what went on between them back in the day and what's happening now and everything that happened in between. But anyway, here's the summary for Lost Records, so I'll let the summary explain it. Rewind back to the 90s and live the defining summer of 4 high school girls as they forge bonds through their growing friendship, their punk band, and an unexplained event that will change their lives. What really happened that summer? So, at first I wasn't sure if there's anything queer in this game. I was like, oh, I'll wait to play it if it's not buggy on release, and I'll like play through it, and I'll come back and I'll report the queer vibes to you. But I was kind of impatient, so I actually did go on Reddit, and I asked, does anyone know if this game has any queer representation? And someone replied, Southern Analyst 2163 replied, yes, it will. Don't Nod is known for having queer rep in their narrative-driven choice-based games, and in the reveal trailer while sitting on the dock, Autumn and Swan are holding hands. Plus the character playlists, which are inspired by the character's personality and music tastes, have a lot of queer artists on them. So I missed all that. I didn't look too deeply into it. I just kept Googling like, Lost Records, lesbians, Lost Records, sapphic. Honestly, I think Google is probably getting wise to that, especially with everything that's going on. So it might be harder to make those kinds of searches to figure out like who's supportive and who's not, or what has queer themes in it. Back when I was researching for the Game Awards, every time a developer showed off a new game, I looked up that developer to see what their positions were, to see if they had queer devs, to see all that kind of stuff. And it was easy to find that information. It's getting harder now. But anyway, so all that is to say is that this game will probably have some queer representation in it, which is great. Someone also said, It's Frenzy9 said yes on the Steam page, which the game launches in 2 days. When you go by the defined tags and click the plus button, you'll see a tag that reads LGBTQ+, meaning the game will include those themes. So I think I did this when I first heard about this game, or at least very recently, and that tag was definitely not there at the time. Or maybe I somehow missed it. But I feel like I looked there and I did not see it. But anyway, point being is I was wrong or unsure and they were right. They reassured me. Someone else, Ice Thief 188, said there's no game they've worked on to my knowledge that hasn't had queer representation. So I can't speak to that. When I was watching trailers for Jusant, their climbing game, I didn't see any obvious queerness in it, although it could be in there. Still haven't played it. Haven't had the chance yet. Looks really good though. But anyway, so Lost Records, Women Rage, it actually comes out. This podcast is releasing on February 17th. It comes out either that evening, depending on the time zone you're in, or the next day. At least here in North America. So I'll be playing through this, and it releases in 2 tapes, so episodes basically, but they're called tapes because it's a 90s themed game. So episode 1 comes out this week, and then I think episode 2 or tape 2 comes out in April. I think it's April, I want to say April 15th, but it's somewhere around there. Yes, I just looked it up. It is April 15th. It's coming out for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. I'm not sure if this game is ever going to come to Switch or Switch 2, because these devs, and there's a little bit of like a caveat here, but Don't Nod has never released a game for the Switch as far as I know. Now, Square Enix and Deck 9, the new developers for the Life is Strange series, have ported all their Life is Strange games to the Switch. But Don't Nod never did that themselves. They never released Tell Me Why on the Switch, which is like, I would argue their most queer game. Like Life is Strange is definitely really queer, but like Tell Me Why is like slap in the face. Here's a trans man. The story revolves around that, plus other things. So they've never put anything on the Switch, so I don't know if Lost Records is going to come to the Switch or Switch 2, even if it can run there. I'm not sure why. Like I said, the Switch 2 has a huge queer fan base, even if Nintendo isn't the most like queer forward, like obviously queer friendly company. Just a lot of us gays like to play the Switch. So anyway, okay, this is the last game I'm going to talk about in depth, but then I'm not going to talk about it in too much depth because like I could talk about it for a while. But it's called Blueprints. It's this first person exploration game where you explore this like creepy-ish house, and it seems like you're building the house as you explore it. So it's kind of like a puzzle game. But anyway, I'm going to read I'm not really sure too much what to make of it, but I'm going to read the summary here. Blueprints is a genre-bending atmospheric architectural adventure where you explore an ever-changing manor of 45 shifting rooms. Discover secrets and mysteries in a house you build, one room at a time. Each door is a decision, and each room you pick adds another layer of strategy, puzzles, and exploration to your adventure. As you unlock more and more rooms with each passing day, the question asked is, can you find the mysterious room 46? So the art style reminds me of classic Borderlands, with more blue and more of a monotone kind of vibe to it. Like it's got that cell shading with thick lines and borders, giving it like this like 3D hand-drawn feel. It seems very ambitious for what looks like, I think, an indie game. But it comes out spring 2025. I don't think they gave a date, but it's supposed to come out this spring, so they're going to need to pick a date soon, I think, because spring is... I mean, if we assume spring includes up to the very end of June, like there's only a few months where they could possibly be releasing this game. So anyway, whenever a developer, indie or not, reveals a release date that's like a launch window, but it's like a few months away, I assume it's getting delayed. Honestly, I think if your game is coming out, you think your game is coming out that soon, but you set a window for it and you tell the public that, I think you just shouldn't, because people will play it when they can play it. I don't think you need to tell anyone what the release date is. But anyway, I'm on a soapbox now about that. It comes to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. There were 2 other games I'm going to quickly mention. Metal Gear Solid 3 got another trailer. They're bringing the Ape Escape mode or monkeys back to the game, but on Xbox it's not going to have that, so they're going to include Bomberman, I think, in the Xbox version, and they revealed the release date is August 28th. And also the Returnal devs, Housemarque revealed their next game, and it's called Saros. It seems to be another time loop game, possibly a roguelike. I think Returnal was like a roguelike, like a 3D roguelike, like a time loop game. So Saros seems to be like that, but more. I don't even know if they gave a release date for that. I think it might have said 2026. Yes, 2026. So there were a bunch of other games in the state of play. I couldn't cover all of them. I really do recommend checking it out for yourself, or at least going to one of your favorite gaming websites and like finding like a list of what all the games were and then maybe watching individual trailers. But that's it for the news this week. It's just a state of play. Like I said, I'll be back next week with the other headlines. And I'm sure this week, coming week will be busier. I think there's even talk of a Nintendo Switch Direct for the Switch 1. I don't know. I'm hopeful there'll be one, but I'm also pessimistic that there will be, like, what can Nintendo announce before the Switch 2? If they have one or two more games releasing before the Switch 2 comes out, they could just like announce it on a trailer on YouTube. So anyway. But anyway, after this short musical interlude, I'm going to be back with Toronto-based queer, black, and neurodivergent developers Rocket Adrift. So stay tuned. I would just like to note that this interview does contain a few backstory-based spoilers for certain Psychroma characters, so just a heads up. And now on to the interview. Hi, True Avatars. I am here with Rocket Adrift, developers of Raptor Boyfriend, a high school romance, and the recently released Psychroma. Rocket Adrift is made up of trans, black, and neurodivergent developers. First up, I have Sloane Smith, pronouns she, her. Sloane is a trans woman, neurodivergent, and is a writer, composer, and background artist. Hi, Sloane. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Next up is Lindsay Rollins, pronouns she, her. Lindsay is a black woman and neurodivergent, a writer, programmer, and lead character artist. Hi, Lindsay, and welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm great, thanks.
And last but certainly not least, I have Titus McNally, pronouns he, him. Titus is a writer, lead programmer, and UI and UX designer. Hi, Titus. How are you?
I'm doing great, staying comfy with this huge snow thing outside.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes working from home so much better.
I know.
Truly.
So I want to thank you all for joining me. I was telling you earlier before we started recording that almost every guest I've had on this show has mentioned you guys. They've praised your games. They've praised you all personally. A lot of them know you. June and Block mentioned you specifically. Maddie and Alex from Undiscovered Country. Zoe Straw. And two streamers also, two of my regulars, Ekami and Lloyd Lloydster, have also played your games. And Lloyd Lloydster even mentioned getting a code for Raptor Boyfriend from you guys at one point to stream the game.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I'm always surprised to hear how many people know about us.
Yeah. Well, on their recommendations, though, I went back and I played Psychroma. I went back and played Raptor Boyfriend, and I fell in love with both games. I played Psychroma through twice.
Awesome. That's so fun. That's so exciting to hear. I'm not gonna lie, we've had several interviews where they haven't played our games. Yeah. Like right after release, they were usually surprised that it was like it took place in Toronto, or like that it was 2 hours long, like average. They're like, oh, I should really play it. Not trying to call out anybody, but yeah.
Well, I will admit, I was surprised Psychroma was set in Toronto because I was so excited about the game, I didn't read the Steam page. I just hit download.
Oh, wow.
And in the game, too, the only time I found Toronto mentioned, at least, and maybe I just didn't discover elsewhere, but is in one of the CPU logs. It's mentioned that it's in Toronto. But aside from that, like, there's not like there's a CN Tower decaying in the background, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we should have done that.
I know.
No, I like that you didn't. Everyone does that. I think that's too... No, I think you made the right choice.
Okay, good.
But I could gush forever, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I would like to jump right into the questions. And I'd like to get to know from each of you what your favorite game is and what you love about it.
Okay, well, it's so hard to choose, but I think one of the games that has had the most impact on me is Kentucky Route. Kentucky Route Zero. Yeah. Why did I forget the zero? I almost said Kentucky Route 11. I think it's one of my favorite games. But yeah, I think that game, I played it after it was all out already, and just kind of really sat with the vibes. I really just like the way that it set tone, paced, really took its time with things, and just like kind of let you sink into the world and the characters and the emotions that they're going through. I love what it was saying about, like, you know, the failure of the American dream, and just like capitalism and debt kind of just like really crippling people almost with their just just the pure like weight of it, you know. I found that like really, really impactful, especially as someone who's had debt before that felt so just like you know, like heavy, you know.
Really resonated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for mine, I think it's hard to choose. Like, there is Stardew Valley, which I've sunk like over 2,000 hours in now. But I want to say something a bit more interesting, maybe a bit more impactful, was probably the Life is Strange series, specifically the like second game. I feel like it doesn't get as much like recognition, I guess, as the first one, because you're playing as like two Latino boys like running away from their home and trying to find a safe space basically to live. But I don't know, it just like the story was just really impacted me in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I just love the road trip vibes of like each episode takes place in a different area, and like you're always traveling with your brother, and like they really develop the relationship between the two of them in a way that I found just like really moving, I guess. And yeah, that's one of my favorite games for sure.
Titus?
I think like it's a very difficult question because there's lots of games and for different vibes. I think I'll just mention that recently we saw the YouTube video, How Many Times Can You Piss in Heavy Rain? And it just it kind of reignited our love for that game and for its weird kind of environments and the weird kind of way that you can just like inhabit that world and go around doing mundane things, and just like the absolute I guess train wreck that you're kind of living in that game. It's the peak kind of David Cage game. I know he's kind of a shitty person, but that game is still so much fun to play. All of us just running around, going as slow as possible through the slow time events and just being weird in the world, you know.
I'll be honest, when you said "How can you piss in heavy rain," I thought that was the whole title of the game, and for a split second.
Oh no, it's just heavy rain. The video is like, how many times can you piss in heavy rain? And this YouTuber just went through such inordinate, like at such lengths to go and document each time you can do this action in this game.
It's
and
really
she played over 80 hours.
Oh my gosh.
It's a very funny video.
Yeah, she's like, don't do this, but I did it so you wouldn't have to, basically.
Well, that was kind of my icebreaker question. I want to move into questions specifically about Rocket Adrift. And all three of you. So how did you all meet and decide to make games together? What's your backstory?
So we go like way back. We met in college, and
which was 12 years ago for us. Yeah, you do the math.
Yeah, we met in a illustration course. We all are artists, and after that, we kind of struggled to find work through illustration. It's not a great, it's not a bustling industry right now.
It's also like changed a lot since like we went to school until now.
So we just kind of started to like try to, you know, we got busy with jobs and everything like that, and we were trying to find ways to just like collaborate or just hang out more. So we kind of, as we're all a little bit workaholics, we kind of made an excuse to hang out by doing work, which was
but we were trying to find ways to stay creative too. Because our jobs weren't fulfilling that for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I was a line cook for 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was rough. I would never want to go back to that.
Yeah. So I actually started a podcast. And, it was like kind of at first an excuse to talk about just media that we liked, and then maybe talk about the projects that we were all working on individually. And that slowly kind of morphed into like a movie podcast. And at the same time, we all started to kind of do some YouTube stuff. And Titus was working on, I'll let you talk about your
YouTube channel.
YouTube channel and stuff, how that led to like the animation bias.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I had a YouTube channel called The Broke-Ass Guide to Life that was about eating ramen and kind of old video games that you could get for free and playing through them. And we also, at the same time, were doing a sort of a Let's Play channel YouTube show while still doing the podcast. And eventually, we kind of decided to just merge all these projects into under one name, which we spent an afternoon kind of typing things into what names had been taken, and eventually came up with Rocket Adrift. And we were initially doing animations for YouTube. I had a little bit of experience making video games, and I had every now and then pitched the idea of us making a video game. And after, I think, months of trying to get our animated show off the ground and kind of burning out, it was just the right time for us to move into video games, because we were looking for, like, not to, I guess, like, demystify it, but we were just like looking for a product that we could sell in order to kind of try to make a living. And it just wasn't viable to do that with the YouTube for us with animation, because it just took too long to produce things. And, you know, there wasn't enough, it wasn't just being shown, or the interest, or maybe it wasn't good enough. I don't know, but we just weren't making it in that sector.
There's like really no independent scene for cartoons,
at least not on
that
YouTube.
we could find access to.
Yeah.
So that kind of was really, you know, we struggled to like find a place within a community, and that was kind of a bummer. And on top of that, we were like talking about, well, would we want to like be showrunners? Like, I don't think so.
Would we pitch to Netflix? Like, what's the pipeline there for like getting paid to do this, basically?
Yeah, we like to be independent. So
yeah,
independent video games
made sense.
Are a thing, and we're like, okay, well.
Also, we were like excited for the creative challenge of like making a game. Like, we had never done it before, and we had like all we really needed to do was teach ourselves how to code. And we started in RenPy, which is fairly simple to learn and pick up. Hence Raptor Boyfriend. But yeah, like I just honestly, it takes all the skills that we've learned up to that point, basically, and puts them together into one project. And I think that's basically what we needed.
So actually, I think that's interesting. You mentioned YouTube and animation and you guys are mentoring currently Undiscovered Country.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Maddie had her start there as well in YouTube animation.
Yeah, it's wild. I looked a bit at her channel and I was like, this is so different from anything you're working on now. It's so weird.
She did what we couldn't.
Yeah, I know. We couldn't figure out how to get a following.
Yeah.
Yeah, Maddie has even worked on my stuff too. Maddie is, I say this in a positive way. I know a lot of people say this negatively sometimes, but Maddie's kind of a jack of all trades sometimes when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I take that as a compliment, honestly. I'd like to be considered jack of all trades.
Yeah.
So, and also you mentioned too that like being independent lets you do things your way. You know, you don't like to be, you know, like someone else to be your boss. And I totally understand that. I respect it actually. And to be honest, you wouldn't be able to put the queerness the level of queerness and neurodivergence and disability, I'm like running out of words here, but you just put so much inclusivity into your games that you just wouldn't be able to with someone like, you know, like a Netflix, for example, and they make games now too. So
yeah.
But your games really wear their queerness on their sleeves. Like it's even though it's not super heavy-handed, it's quite subtle, but it's still very visible in your games. Like when you play it in if you know what you're looking for, and even if you don't know what you're looking for, like you can tell, like Psychroma is a queer game. You can tell Raptor Boyfriend's a queer game. In fact, like when I read the summary for Raptor Boyfriend, I would not have pegged it as a queer game. But the second you start playing, you're like, oh yeah, okay, Stella is clearly bi or pansexual. Then you start playing through Psychroma, and maybe if you just do like a straight run through the story, you can kind of ignore all that. But like if you dig into any little part of that, the crevices and the nooks and crannies in that house, you find that there's like queer people, there's found family. So like that stuff it's very hard to miss. So I'm just curious, how do you navigate this fine line?
Oh, it's
I don't know that we have like a formalized way of doing it, honestly. We just kind of go by feel a lot of the time.
I think what we know is like we know what we don't want to see. I guess. Like we don't want we don't want like the representation that we do in our games to feel forced or to feel kind of pandering or
shallow.
Yeah, like I think like one thing we took note of with Raptor Boyfriend is just like a simple example, but like we watched this like video essay on like the queer button is what they called it, which was like the idea that if you want to, you can make, Chloe from Life is Strange gay, and you can do that with a press of a button. But if you don't,
then it's never
straight, or something, right? Like
it never comes
this
into play,
idea that it's not canon. It's your experience, sure, but that's not like the canon of the game. And I'm like, so that kind of rubbed us the wrong way, and we were like Stella should be canon by, and like we want that to be like obvious through the way that she behaves and the
and
fact
interacts
that she's, like,
with the characters.
She thirsts equally for every character,
Yeah.
And it's just about who the relationship works out with. But so yeah, like I think things like that are we kind of, it's a mixture, I think, of like we try to be somewhat educated about all this stuff and like hear people's perspectives. For Psychroma, we won the Ubisoft Indie Series grant, and with that came like the ability to ask them for like resources and stuff like that. And one of the things we asked for was to talk to their accessibility consultant, who helped us with understanding the do's and don'ts behind representation when it comes to somebody with a physical disability. Because Agatha
uses a wheelchair.
A wheelchair. So that helped us with some of the language to avoid, and as well as certain things like just like
negative tropes.
Negative tropes and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's like a mixture of being somewhat educated and also just like saying the stuff that like we feel passionate about, and like putting, sometimes like it's like a queer vibe,
Yeah, I don't know like any other way to describe it other than like that's just how my brain works. Just like if I want to write a compelling like romance, for example, for Raptor Boyfriend, it's just like there are certain things that I look for in a relationship that just doesn't really fit well with like comp heteronormativity or compulsory heteronormativity. Things like making connection on an emotional level, or like getting to know the person through their interests, or just like things that don't aren't generally like explored in a romantic dating sim. We wanted to like push the boundaries of what it means to build a relationship with someone other than just giving them gifts and having a heart meter go up,
And especially not just telling them what they want to hear. Like a lot of dating sims, it's about you hear someone say, oh, I like so-and-so, and then the correct answer is to say, I also like so-and-so, We didn't want that to be, we didn't want you to have to change your character and their preferences and what they liked in order to get it, like gain someone's approval. You could disagree with people in our games and still, it's about the act of spending time together that builds affection, not about changing yourself for another person. And I think another thing we try to do is just treat every character like with as a character and with respect. And when they interact together, then it becomes like the things are brought up naturally when you do that, I think, rather than if you were trying to force it against some checklist or something like that.
Totally. Yeah, like I don't want to go too long in this question, but like I feel like a good example for me of like the trans representation in Psychroma is the scene, slight spoilers, but not really. There's a scene between the main character and a character, Fox.
He's in Fox, yeah.
And they're both trans, and Fox is kind of a lot further along his transition, and has has a little bit more confidence in his gender and everything like that. And Hayes is asking questions to
Hayes
Fox.
Is still just like learning about what gender means to them.
Yeah, and that I felt was like such like an important thing to put in to kind of show the different parts of transitioning and the different parts of being trans, and also just something that's so common, I think, in the trans experience is like having other trans people to talk to who can kind of help you understand yourself and help you feel a little less like anxious about it all. Just like knowing like it's so like it takes time, or it's normal to question, or it's normal
to be confused,
and it will come to you eventually, that kind of thing. And like I think you don't see that as much in other things because I guess it's a little mundane, but like,
or I don't know, like I have played games where there are canonically trans characters, but they just don't really get into like how they got to where they were. They're always just like, here they are, they're like perfectly trans. The only example that I could see that was interesting was the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, where they had a character that like transitioned and went through like a small part of their story was their transition. But yeah, it's very rare, I thought.
Well, I also think that like there's just like not a lot of media where there's multiple trans characters.
Yeah.
So you can't really have one trans character talk to another.
Exactly.
And that's such like a
it's like the Bechdel test, but for basically.
Well, what I really like about your game is, first off, you were talking about the scene between the conversation between Fox and Hayes, but the scene that resonated most with me is when we flash back into Agatha's memories, and she's talking to Salem pre-transition, and she's like, why are you living through this woman's memory? She's like a horrible person. She's like been like cosplaying as Dr. Holloway. And this Dr. Holloway is like, and I'm going to spoil the game. I will put a spoiler warning before this whole interview, because I would like just to pick your brain. And also, I related to that because before transitioning, and I talked about this in the last episode, but I said that like before I transitioned, any time I was exploring femininity or womanhood and I was dipping my toe in, it felt as volatile and as dangerous and as horrible as stepping into a murderer's shoes and cosplaying as a murderer, because it's your only chance to experience what it's like to live as a woman. And so I know this is not the same conversation you mentioned before, but I found that really resonated. And I also think too, like you talked about Life is Strange earlier, and I think those are amazing queer games. I even think the last one, which wasn't so strong, has amazing trans characters, has amazing queer representation. But at the same time, there is a difference between your games and theirs. And I'm not just trying to like gas you up either. I do feel a huge difference between Psychroma and Life is Strange, because you can tell that Psychroma was made by people who are queer. You can tell that Life is Strange was pressing a button, and they press the button better than a lot of other button pressers, but it's still not like I just like playing Psychroma. Like even if you hadn't said a single word in those games that was queer or like put any labels on anything in that game, but you still kept everything else the same, I still would have been able to tell who all the trans characters were, who all the queer characters were. Like, anyway, I'm not trying to gas you up. I just think there's a reason why your games feel authentic to me and why I love them. Like even in moments where maybe I was like, oh, I maybe wouldn't have made that choice, or I don't, you know what I mean? Like at the end of it, like even you said it's like a 2-hour game. Like went back and I played it again, and I wouldn't do that with a Life is Strange game because there was an authenticity to it. So I'm saying this because I hope you keep steering into that, because I think it works, and I think like I see the beginnings of something very big here. And we need good queer representation in the games industry. It's why this podcast exists. So anyway, this also leads into my next question, which is I'm going to skip over the middle question about Raptor Boyfriend because we're now talking about Psychroma, and that's where I really want to kind of sink my hooks into it a little bit. But it was like a fever dream of all fever dreams.
Yeah.
Like, it's so psychedelic and so weird, and just like it felt like I was having a fever dream while playing it. It's like pulled from the depths of a queer person's subconscious. And I know we've kind of like hit that nail on the head already, but where did you come up with the concept for this game?
Oh my God. There was a lot of iteration with this game, and I think
there was a lot of exploration on themes too. Like, before we even had mechanics in place, we did an exercise where we tried to like create themes and then make mechanics that worked within those themes first.
Yeah.
Which is not like the general approach, I feel like.
Yeah.
With an adventure style game, but
yeah, and I think that was we definitely like kind of stewed in this game a lot. Like, we were like thinking about it a lot and like going, is this the right direction? This is the right direction. It started off like that there was like a haunted AI in the house, and
it was like stealing people's memories.
And we kind of steered clear of that because it just felt a little like so many people have done that kind of thing. And then we kind of got really into this idea of like memories and identity and all that stuff, and how like
what makes you your past actions, or your current actions, or what you believe in. Yeah, just kind of really like philosophical stuff.
Yeah. And I think like just we're all fans of the cyberpunk genre, and like in that genre you need like one of the core themes is always like what makes humans human, and we wanted to explore that, but from like kind of a more identity based thing, you know, because I mean, as queer people and as trans people, neurodivergent people, there's a whole group of terrible people that want to be like, oh, you're obsessed with identity, you're this identity, and your identity is this. And I started to think about like the base concept of our game, which is, well, the setup, which is Hayes wakes up and
doesn't remember who they are.
And I was like, what would that do to somebody who's gone through as much trauma and as much growth and as much kind of like change, you know, they have their own like gender journey they're going through, as well as just like dealing with the past and their guilt and of like
the guilt of survivor's guilt.
Survivor's guilt and all this stuff. And what would that do to somebody? And would your identity still be in there somewhere? You know, would parts of your identity...
Is it innate?
Yeah. Well, this was one of the questions we were trying to answer is like, is part of your identity just innate? Is it in there? Or is it conditional? Is it something that...
Is it formed by your environment?
Yeah. Is it something that society creates? Is it something that, your past experiences? I guess that's kind of conditional. Yeah. But yeah, like multiple different factors. I think ultimately it's a mixture of all of those things. But like we wanted to explore all those different concepts. Yeah, and the psychedelicness, I think we love just getting psychedelic with it.
Yeah, we really wanted to push the like visuals, the visual style, particularly with like the glitch effects and animated effects. We were like really inspired by, and it was the first time that we worked in pixel art too, which was interesting. Honestly,
it was gorgeous, by the way. I was like a piece of the eyes. I enjoyed looking at all of it.
I really enjoyed drawing in that style. I think I exclusively want to work in pixel art now because of that.
Same, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
We're also extremely inspired by sort of like art house horror. You know, the kind of we had a lot of discussions about what we liked about horror and what we didn't like about horror. And I think that the feelings that we were trying to capture were kind of what happens in art house and psychological horror, of the sort of unsettled thing where there are lots of unanswered questions, because we found that kind of stuff sits with you more, and you end up churning those thoughts in your head a lot more than something that, you know, it's the monster, or it has a very definitive kind of just like answer to it at the end. We wanted to leave the player with, if they were engaging with the material, a lot of unanswered questions that they would form their own theories about, and in doing so think about those things, the themes that we were trying to, you know, push forward in the game.
Well, it worked, because I don't know what the fuck I just played. I love it. I have theories, like I said in one of my earlier emails with you, but like I have lots of questions and theories, and those are, like I always say, this is going to sound silly, but one of my favorite movies is Prometheus. Not because none of the human characters, they don't make choices that make any sense, but at the end of the day, there's all these philosophical questions, and I'm like, I have more fun thinking about like the what ifs than I do about like actually what happened. And I feel the same way about Psychroma. Like, I don't know what I played, and it's so different from Raptor Boyfriend. So I want to jump back to a Raptor Boyfriend question, because these games are so different.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to ask my Raptor Boyfriend question. I'm going to leap back to Psychroma, because I want to kind of like highlight for the listeners too that these two games are very different visually, not just stylistically too, but like the art styles are so different. So like there's colorful characters. There's colorful characters in Psychroma as well, but it's like I wouldn't use the word colorful to describe them. It's a very darker, bleak game, despite how colorful it is. But in Raptor Boyfriend, like it's like a small town setting. Like it's happier, right? Like there's some like sadness to it, obviously there, but it's like it slaps you in the face with how colorful it is. And it's like a coming of age story. You know, set in a small town in a high school. So what were your sources of inspiration for that game?
Basically your high school experience.
Somewhat. Yeah, I grew up in a small town and had a, like, I guess, somewhat typical high school experience on the surface of things.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think me and Lindsay were really we were really watching a lot of teen dramas at the time.
Yeah.
So-Called Life is one of the ones that we're still love.
Oh my god, yeah.
And on top, I guess, like, to be really honest, Raptor Boyfriend kind of started as kind of a joke to us. Like, we were like, what if in Twilight Robert really was a monster? Instead of saying he's a monster, but he's gorgeous.
Yeah, like twinkling in sunlight.
What if he was like something really ridiculous, like a rat?
Yeah, like something that would be really hard to picture, you know, like Bella being into.
And then we kind of ran with it, and that whole joke kind of faded into the background, and we started to take it very sincerely.
Very seriously,
and, you know, I never want to, like, whenever I reveal that, I'm always worried that that's going to make people feel like their emotional experience in the game was invalid, and we were just kind of like
trolling or something.
That's not true. We put a lot of sincere emotions into this game, and we wanted it to be really heartfelt.
What it came down to for me was like, can we get them to laugh but then cry?
Yeah.
You know, like at the end, I wanted the player to be like, I can't believe how much I care about this freaking raptor. You know?
Yeah. And I think we played other visual novels that we were kind of that were out there, and while we're not, we came away from it being like, I don't really love that game, but like Dream Daddy, for example, had a really strong beginning, but we kind of
fell off
critiques about the end of it, and everything, but yeah, we were kind of like, okay, I think that despite that, it is an influence for sure.
For sure.
Also pigeon dating game and everything like that.
Had a full boyfriend.
Yeah, and I guess to explain some of the like how we went from that to like Psychroma is we all kind of times got dark, I guess.
Yeah, but also we were playing, like, we have an actual play podcast where it's like cyberpunk themed podcast, and so we were really inspired by the setting of cyberpunk. And also it was like leading up to the release of Cyberpunk 2077, and we thought, well, this might be helpful, like, for like marketability wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we were all burnt out on like the optimism and the lightness of like a coming of age story, and we wanted to try and go like push our writing chops and try to go to a dark place. And maybe that was a bit of a catharsis for us as well, like how we were feeling at the time. Yeah.
I think absolutely. We were like, I can speak to personally, I think that what Sloane was saying really resonates with it, is that it was just dark times, and we just didn't really have it in us to kind of pretend that everything was all right and make a comedy, you know, because in a lot of ways, like, you know, the small town setting came from Sloane's experiences. The 90s time period, I'm a bit older, came from my experiences, especially the details of like the phone, the television,
jelly shoes,
and calling your friends afterwards on a corded phone, all of that stuff. But it is in a lot of ways kind of like what we wish high school was like, as opposed to what it was actually like.
Reality,
you know, was like a great experience that is sad because it's fleeting rather than our own real high school experiences, right? But then it just came to a point where we just like, I think we're disaffected with what was going on in the world, and the only thing what we were creatively was just at a place where we wanted to talk about the dark stuff, you know, and we wanted to make an attempt at that, and horror just seemed to be calling to us.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I just want to go back and talk about how, Lindsay, you were like, it might be good for marketing and everything like that.
Right.
It's always funny to see how, like, at the beginning of projects, we're like, this will be really marketable. And then then you've played the games. Like, they're not marketable.
I mean, like, they're deeply personal and specific.
Personal, weird games.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. I'm also too the fact that what went on with Cyberpunk and it came and went, and then they fixed it after it came and went. Like you probably dodged a bullet there, at least with that.
Yeah, totally. For sure.
Totally. And it's so weird too. Like, it feels like Cyberpunk as a genre, like, maybe it's because Cyberpunk,
it's become corporate now.
Yeah.
Now every AAA game is trying to put cyberpunk elements in their thing, and it's like, Cyberpunk has always been like anti-establishment, anti-corporate. It's just so weird that, like, I don't know, like was it Bethesda that's making, or the space game that got announced?
Naughty Dog,
Naughty Dog is making a cyberpunk space game. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I think like we have our version of what we feel cyberpunk is, and
then there's the mainstream,
and then we just saw a lot of examples of it being used in ways that we were just like, this does not represent what we find interesting about the genre.
Yeah.
And of course the genre itself has a lot of issues.
Yeah.
But like, to us it's always been a very queer, and not only queer but very like anti-capitalist, inclusive kind of genre.
And philosophical, you know, like it often does tackle some really deep subjects, you know, the good stuff anyway. So we wanted to be part of that lineage.
Yeah.
Needless to say, though, our next game will not be Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like anachronistic. There is some retro futurist vibes still,
sure,
but it's not like strictly.
The thing we don't want is like cell phones and modern day stuff, because it's not interesting to render, I think. So we like to do things in not really fantastical environments, but just different or anachronistic from our own timelines.
Yeah.
I feel that way about movies too. Now with everything happening in present day, you see all these like every short film, everything has to have like a text message graphic that's like unique and stylized, and it just kind of gets like, I don't want to watch people communicate through text.
Yeah, it's not interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched this video essay about like how the person making the video essay was like, I don't know that people want to watch people on their cell phones.
No.
Everyone's on their cell phones all the time.
Exactly.
It's like they want an escape from that.
Exactly. I agree.
That's a little true.
Yeah.
So going back to the leap from Raptor Boyfriend and to Psychroma, we talked about visually and thematically, but I'm curious, like, because you said you learned how to code and program and make games as you went. How was the developmental leap from Raptor Boyfriend to Psychroma? Like, what was that like?
Oh, that was fraught. It was a lot.
Titus can
speak to
a lot
that
about this because he kind of bore the brunt of the technical issues with switching.
We had to switch engines several times.
Yeah.
It was its own kind of horror game in a lot of ways, I think. We're trying to I guess going forward, we're trying to be a lot more stable with that kind of stuff and I think we learned a lot of lessons. But it was a nightmare. It's hard to like describe it any other way except that it was just constantly putting out fires that were springing up with the builds, and our inexperience plus like having to just change engines halfway through and all of that stuff. Just it made it very difficult, and so in a lot of ways, I kind of appreciate the game that we made, but I feel like we in the future I think we have a lot given the chance to continue making games. I think we could do even better, so that's the way I look at it anyway.
We definitely want to do it differently moving forward, but like part of the issue is that like we got familiar with RenPy's scripting language for Raptor Boyfriend, but then we realized for our next game, we wanted to kind of push the boundaries and have more mechanics and more player input that required us to change engines because RenPy is not really great for like an adventure style game. So we were looking around and we tried out Game Maker. Our demo build was made in Game Maker. But then we realized, it's not great for build sharing. And we wanted something that was a bit more dynamic and had a bit more capabilities in terms of like lighting and effects and stuff. So then we switched to Unity between like demo and the alpha.
This was essentially halfway through development. A lot of the game was already kind of built. So that was maybe the biggest source of our problems. And we just never had time to kind of assess it and figure out how to really make a game using that engine. We were always just kind of playing catch up with that decision. Which I think ultimately it was probably the best decision. But in the future, we're not going to be making games with Unity. They just kind of.
I mean,
we just got a couple. They showed their ass, and we're going on open source Godot for the foreseeable future. So
I think I prefer a lot more.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's a much it's a better environment, and also I think we're sort of taking time to learn how to make a game in the engine, and I think that experience of Psychroma, we can sort of look at all the bumps and say like, how can we do it differently, and how can we make sure we don't fall down those holes again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have two more questions about Psychroma. One, I promise, is super quick at the end. It's kind of just more of like for my own peace of mind kind of thing. I'm just kind of curious. Sure. But the first question I want to ask about Queer Them All. And so for listeners who may not be aware, Queer Them All is a volunteer group that aims to bring queer games to more languages by giving a developer, or in this case developers, the opportunity to have their game localized for free. So Psychroma was chosen last year and was localized into 16 languages, and I just want to know what that was like.
Okay, yeah. So right off the top, I really love their mission statement, and I really agree with this idea of like trying to bring more queer games to different parts of the world, because honestly, if nothing else, through this experience made me realize like how lacking localization is in these different countries. And it became like a self-fulfilling prophecy, where it was like I realized that there was so little support for games in these countries, but then when people did support for these countries, there was so little like revenue that you could get from those countries, and so it just became like a chicken and an egg scenario. It's like what's the cause of this?
Yeah.
So yeah, it anyway, that aside, it was kind of like a nightmare to localize 16 languages.
We just weren't ready for
we
it.
were not. Okay, yeah, first of all, we had not prepared the build for it at all. We weren't expecting to get this, because the way they did it was they put it to a vote on several games that applied for the opportunity. And our Psychroma won by a landslide, and it was basically the same month that we launched the game. So we're already like have no spoons left.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, you want? And we're like, yay. Well, that's amazing. Like, we weren't expecting to get free localization.
Yeah,
That's like,
honestly,
it was like, why wouldn't we go for this opportunity, right? But then we realized like, oh, so the build is not in shape to implement these new like localizations, so that's going to be a lot of work like up front for Titus and I to organize. And then secondly, we did a little bit of research on like localization in general and how it's handled in the games industry, and there's a reason why people don't usually do more than like 4 or 5 languages because it is a gauntlet of like a UI text strings and like we use this dialogue manager system for Psychroma, and it was like designed in a way that only one person could make changes at a time in it. So like just trying to like coordinate and organize all of that. And not to mention like the amount of people that helped localize the game. There was over 70 people that came through. Oh yeah. So the organization of the teams even was just like unheard of. Like it was like the most ambitious thing that we had ever worked on with like people outside of our team.
Yeah.
It was intense and at times extremely stressful, particularly like in fulfilling requests that the teams had for specific translation requests and things like that. It was really hard to, like, there were some issues with fonts. Oh my God.
I can see that, yeah.
There's like...
and it's not just us. It's like, this is a known issue for certain languages that have different alphabets. Like, there's not a lot of fonts that support their alphabet, and it's terrible.
Like Thai
and Greek were the particular issues.
Like, because, there are fonts, but they look so different. And people...
And they may not be legible, too.
Very passionate about the game.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. They're very passionate about our game and also their translation, so they want the font to look good.
Yeah, and they're like volunteers too, which is incredible. Like they're just volunteering their time for this. So like they want to make sure that it's like, up to snuff.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. And then you look online and you're just like, well, there's like no good pixel fonts for these languages.
No.
So there's lots of unique challenges that we ended up running into, and like it
was a lot for a 3-person team. Specifically, just like it was mostly Titus and I working to implement the like technical stuff, and it got overwhelming. For me at least.
I think like all the credit in the world goes to that initiative.
Oh my God. Yeah.
They
really
all their time, and they put a lot of
and
time
they put
in.
so much work in, and it's like incredible like that so many people came through.
It's so cool that our game has all those languages.
I know.
And
I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've seen any other game with over 10 languages.
yeah, and they have, and like some of the people like became like huge fans as they were playing.
Yeah.
So cool to see, just like them theorizing and stuff.
Yeah, like we were part of a Discord server where we could see them like talking and organizing, and yeah, they got
getting excited. About
I don't know. Yeah, they got really into it.
Yeah, and then
that's so cool
about certain translations and stuff.
Yeah,
yeah. So as difficult as it was, and I
know we're going a bit long, but I wouldn't mind adding something to this as well.
Yeah, no, please.
Go for it. Go for it. I'm rambling at this point.
Again, I think that everything that we went through is just absolutely worth it if some person in a country who doesn't maybe speak English or the major languages can find our game, be able to play it, be able to understand it, and be able to, and then that experience means something to them. Like that is like the gift that Queer the Mall has given to us and to people that might get something out of our game. But I think to speak to that time, like we were all extremely burnt out from making the game. We had hoped that this would be more of a success than it was, and we all needed some time and some space, and it was extremely difficult to just continue on working on this thing that had been really painful up until that point, and we felt like we never really were able to have discussions about, you know, the process, the depression, I guess, the postpartum depression of releasing that game and all of that, because we had all, in our own ways, poured a lot of ourselves. This is the game, I think, where we most like put ourselves into it, the most, where we most like bore our souls into the story, into the game and everything, and really tried with everything that we had to make this game the best it could be. And it was a struggle to continue working on it after while dealing with the kind of disappointment of it and the not having the space between it. But again, all so glad that we did, and all credit to Queer the Mall. But it was a dark time for us.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, speaking of bringing the game to more people, Psychroma is currently available on PC, but it's not on any of the platforms like that Raptor Boyfriend is on. And I was just wondering if there were plans in the future to bring, you know, Psychroma to maybe Switch 2 or PS5, stuff like that.
So we're currently, should we say? Yeah, I guess we could say that.
We're allowed to.
Yeah, we're currently developing it for Xbox.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so we're like basically coming up to cert, which is like hopefully really soon.
That's awesome.
I hope we pass cert there. But yeah, we were talking about having it for maybe for Switch if we had a dev kit, but Sony doesn't really make sense as an option for us, just based on like kind of what Sony's like whole ecosystem is like. They're very closed door. They're not very like open to queer like games or diverse games in general.
They are. They just have some. I don't know.
It's weird.
They're very like weirdly prudish.
Yes.
Which is you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I know. But
they have some like strict rules about sex and drugs and so I don't know.
Our game has both. So
But not only that, it's like we never really got even an open door for that. Like Xbox has their program where we were part of the ID at Xbox program, which is a program designed to help indies get on the platform. So it just made sense for us to go for Xbox. And then Switch, we don't really have like a dev kit in particular, but we have like we've heard that it's not too difficult to develop for Switch. And
at
like
the moment, I don't think we can make any promises about Switch.
No. We haven't even
it's a possibility.
It
would be cool.
It would be cool.
Your audience is on Switch. Your audience is, I'll tell you right, there's so many queer people that play Switch games.
Figure. And Raptor Boyfriend, like we didn't have anything to do with the technical process of porting it to platforms, but we get the sales like monthly, and we see like how well Raptor Boyfriend sells on these different platforms. And honestly, yeah, the leading platforms in sales for us are usually Xbox and Switch.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But if anyone's listening and wants the game on Switch, buy it on Steam. Buy it on Steam and support us, and then we'll help port.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. Honestly, it's just the more it's supported in the current platforms, the more we can port to other things.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very, and everyone listening to this podcast should definitely go play Psychroma. Raptor Boyfriend too, but especially Psychroma, because I think you're right when you say like you really bore your souls there. I can tell. It shows. Both games are amazing. I love both games, but like Psychroma is like, I can tell that like you, all three of you were in there, like that, like souls, like you said, you bore your soul. So do we have time for one more quick question?
Absolutely, yeah.
So without giving away too much, and I know you've talked a little bit about it earlier in the podcast, but what kinds of queer themes and perspectives are you hoping to explore in your next game?
So in our next game, I think our main queer perspective is basically where being queer aligns with like anti-capitalist kind of.
Yeah, we're going hard into anti-capitalism.
With everything going on in the world today, I guess
you have a lot of inspiration.
Yeah,
we're kind of hating on billionaires.
For
our next game.
It's a big mood, so it's kind of like our our inspiration.
I think also kind of collectivism and community is where we're headed to. It might be it's a little sad to say, but after Psychroma and after came out, we felt like we had bore our souls, like we said, and also we had put so much of ourselves into it, and
it just didn't really seem to make that much of an impact.
Didn't make us
at least not in the sales
wise, but and like culturally. So I think we're a bit burnt and need some like time to like. So the next game won't be
as ambitious,
but it's also going to be a shorter game. We're planning to make it in like half a year and see how that works out. But and then as we go forward, I don't think that the queerness is going anywhere in our games at all. But it might not be as like here's my soul.
Not as deep. Basically.
I think that just comes from the fact also that the game isn't as narrative as narratively focused as Psychroma or even Raptor Boyfriend was. But also, we need to like a little bit of a rest on going that hard in terms of the writing. And
the next game feels more like a self-care game, basically.
Let's be kind to ourselves. And then on top of that, let's villainize.
Let's dunk on some billionaires.
Billionaires.
Definitely.
Collectivist action.
Do we want to talk anything more about it, or do we want to wait for the specifics?
I think
we haven't announced it yet.
Yeah, we might want to wait, I guess, just because we haven't.
Well, whatever it ends up being, whenever it comes out, put me down for a copy, please.
Sure,
I'm excited.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for all three of you joining me today. This has been awesome. I'm so glad to have finally sat down with you after hearing so much about you guys from pretty much everyone else who's been on my show. You're all super cool. I love your games. And I know I've also heard too, Maddie did mention that like she had mentioned previously that you were concerned about, response to Psychroma. And I get bogged down too. Like I'll have 1 week where I'll get like 30 listeners on an episode immediately, and the next week I'll get like 5, and I'll be like, I don't know why. I'm like, what it resonated with people in this one versus that one.
Yeah, for sure.
All I'll say is that like you guys are doing really cool, really good queer representation, and I think I'm just one person, but like stay the course because I think you're gonna find your audience. I think your games are gonna resonate with a lot of people. They just need to play them. So I think
Thank you.
I think a lot of people will feel similarly that I do. So.
That means a lot.
Yeah. We really needed to hear that. Like when we're talking about doing the podcast, we're like, we need this.
Yeah.
So we haven't, like we said, we haven't had like a podcast interview where the people are like actual fans or anything. Like they usually just ask us about other things. And
I like just started to read the reviews of the game like this week.
You've been shielding
because
yourself
I was
from
like
the
too
streamers.
nervous to see like negative ones because I was like so sensitive to it. But like seeing all the positive ones, I was like, oh, okay.
Like it's like actually resonating with people. Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think maybe the psychedelicness turns people off. Like you said, like it's bleak, it's soul bearing, and it's reflective of the time you developed it in. And I think too, a lot of people are like head in the sand about stuff related to that too. So
I think that was like the biggest pushback we got was just like, oh, like I don't understand why you're jumping from memory to memory and stuff. And it's like it's not supposed to be clear. Like the answers aren't going to be presented to you.
Yeah.
Like it's up for you to decipher like who Hayes is and what they've done. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I could gush for hours and not be done and theorize with you. But that is all the time we have. But I just want to say once again, thank you so much for joining me and sharing everything that you shared. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on True Avatars.
For sure. It's been a pleasure. Yeah. Doing this. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us on. You've been great. This has been a great time. I was a little nervous about this, but it's been a blast talking about this.
Yeah.
I'm glad we all got something out of it then.
Yeah.
It's always great too when you feel comfortable talking about this kind of stuff on
for sure.
on a podcast too. Like sometimes you shield yourself in certain situations. So it's nice to be able to be honest about
and open up.
Process. And open up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I said it was like over, but I just want to say like in response to that too, like I said, I could talk forever, but this podcast, I've had trouble finding a fine line between like talking about the horrors of the world and just trying to be a positive force in the world and finding good balance. So 100% I understand that too. So
awesome. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Take care, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Yeah, you too.
And that just about wraps up this week's show. Thanks, True Avatars, for joining me for another episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. If you've made it this far into the episode, I really appreciate you taking the time to support queer-made content, which is a big deal. If you want to support the show, it would be really great if you could leave a rating, review, or comment on your preferred podcast platform. I welcome you to check out the website, trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word, that's trueavatarspodcast.com. You can also find the show on Blue Sky, Threads, and YouTube under the handle @TrueAvatars, all one word, and on Instagram under True Avatars. Importantly, if you or anyone you know is queer and involved with video games in some way, please don't be shy. I would love to hear from more queer voices in video games. Your voice is unique and valid and worth sharing with the world. And if you don't want to be on the show or know anyone who's interested, but you know about a cool queer video game or a games industry story that's queer related, please let me know. The show's official email is trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. That's trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. You can also feel free to reach out via the website or the aforementioned social media pages. Things are tough out there, and queer people need to stick together when we can. Bye, True Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.